That's it. Hit record. That's it. Welcome to the Shrewsbury Biscuit podcast. I'm Alex Whiteley, and today we're bringing like a I don't know what this is, but we're gonna. So we, me and my friend, my guest today, we're having a conversation about podcasts, and he was like, "I need to know everything I need to know about podcasts." So I was like, "Okay, we'll do a." Is that your phone? Just chuck it away. I'll put it on airplane mode because otherwise it messes up. And we had a conversation, and he was like, "I need to learn about podcasting." I was like, "Okay, well, let's do a podcast about podcasts." So this is our little podcast workshop that we're doing. So if you want to start a podcast, which I encourage everyone to do, there is no competition. There are like 8 billion people. That's 16 billion years.
This is it. Well, let's have a bit of context. Tell the good people of the world how we met.
We met in prison.
It's not as bad as it sounds. In fact, it's worse.
Probably. Actually, this is Stuart Goodwin, or Stu, and you're a good actor.
Thank you.
You are a good actor. I think you're fantastic because...
Well, there's no acting, is there? It's all real. I think that's what we did. I was just talking to somebody over in Telford about this. They said, "Do you work with actors in the prison?" I said, "They're not actors, but they're the best actors I've ever met because they're totally real. They're delinquents. They're the sort of dregs and dross, and they're brilliant. And it's such an amazing community vibe, isn't there? It's like, you know, we all hate each other and love each other. And
I always say that if I could sample the chemistry that we have when like we're getting ready or at break time or when we finish, whatever, if I could sample that and put it in a bottle and give it to people, it would just make people happier in the world. I want to do that, you know.
Well, I kind of figure that although we're in prison, the paradox is we're freer in that prison than we are on the outside, and people are coming inside and paying good money to have a prison experience, and it's incredible, isn't it? To have a real prison recently decommissioned, and we get to play in it. It's the best film set on earth, and they recently filmed the prison thing there, didn't they?
Time with Sean Bean. I killed somebody.
Absolutely, yeah.
I don't know. I'm going to prison.
So Sean Bean's been there. Everybody's been there as anybody. Most haunted Coronation Street. But we get to play in it on a regular basis, and the stuff we get up to is pretty more radical than they do. Yeah.
And it's not an easy role either. It really isn't, because I mean, like the role I'm playing at the moment, I can't say too much about in case you want to buy tickets to Prison Break and it might ruin it. But my role is I cover nearly, I think it's like 6K or something like that. It's like 4 miles or something. We walk up and down, up and down, up and down. It's about 16,000 steps. I don't know what that equates to, but it's high octane. You're on the whole time.
It's a prison break. So it's a kind of Cluedo. You've got to break out, but you've got to interact with the. Well, I don't know what you'd call the kind of. We're not really actors, are we?
Immersive.
Yeah, the immersive people.
You know the NPC characters you get on a video game that come up to you and talk to you, and you can't do anything to. That's what we are, basically.
This is it. And the thing of it is, people in these role plays go into some radically crazy, quite dark, funny, exhilarating places, and we never know what's going to come out of anybody's mouth. And he is dangerous.
Me?
You are dangerous, but in a really exciting, funny way. And you know, there are actors who prepare and they learn scripts and everything's on stage, and here it's just what comes into your head in the moment, isn't it? And it's really free. So anyway, back to podcasts. We've sort of pimped.
No, I think actually I want to just explore you, right? Okay, because you have an interesting job, and I want you to explain it to me, because I nearly swore then. Truly understand what you do. You're like a tour guide.
I'm a tour guide in Scotland. So I sort of take people around the Highlands and Islands of Scotland, and it's just an amazing job. And when I'm not taking people up and around and sort of showing them castles and lochs and mountains and forests and wilderness, then if I have weeks off, then I'm just climbing mountains and going out there on my own. So it's the most exhilarating thing you could do for me, because you know, when you're on mountains and you're on your own and you're in a blizzard or a hurricane or a storm or it's snow, all you've got is your own person to get yourself out of that and the elements. And the amount of times I'm just on a kind of on a knife edge, and you know, death to the left of me, death to the right of me. If you make a wrong step, you're dead, and there's something really exhilarating about that.
Yeah, so, I saw a video of some guy doing that really dangerous path on Snowdon where it's like really narrow.
Yeah,
and I was just like, what? I didn't even realise that path existed. And
yeah, I mean, upon just coming off of Ben Nevis, there's something called the Carnmore Jerry-Garrett. It's like a knife-edge ridge, and it's like going along a dragon's spine. And I came off of it one night. I came down, and it was like the sky was pink, and there wasn't a breeze, there wasn't a breath of wind, and you sort of hop from rock to rock to rock, and you look down either side, and you feel totally alive, knowing that, you know, if you misplace a foot, you can plummet to your death. And people regularly do, but it's so exhilarating. Obviously, I don't necessarily take clients into those locations. I go pretty much on my own, and for me, having that kind of break into the wilderness and into the most beautiful country in the world, you know, I mean, you know, eagles flying above you, stags around you, grouse and ptarmigan. I mean, you're in paradise and there's nobody there. And for me, it's one of the last true wildernesses on earth. So to do that and to tour around, and we do this, we used to work with a company called Flashpack. And we do these high octane kind of 3-4 day events. So people would fly to Inverness. I'd pick them up, we'd take them for a walk, they'd go canoeing, they'd do canyoning, axe throwing, they'd be shooting clay pigeons, and they'd end up in a castle doing a bungee jump. I mean, this stuff was just like crazy, radical fun. The canyoning in particular, you know, they put you in these wetsuits, you get a very quick introduction to abseiling. And within half an hour, you're in the river, and you're sort of jumping into pools. You're kind of edging along rocks. You're abseiling down waterfalls, and suddenly you're not like walking down a river system. You're in it. So it's all about getting back to nature and the elements, and just clears your head. So I have like 6 months of the year doing that. And then I kind of drift back down into England
in the winter
and I do my sort of acting jobs. You know, I mean, I work as Santa from 6 weeks of the year doing various things.
This is going to sound really daft. But I've been genuinely thinking about it. I think I'd be a good Santa. I mean,
I think you would be perfect. You've got the right body shape. I think you've got the right personality. You just have to turn Splinter down a bit. All right. All right.
What do you want for Christmas?
You can't terrify them.
I'd be asking kids what they can give me for Christmas.
Yeah. You'll be sort of like twisting them, and no, you've got to be gentle. So the kids entertain. I do kids parties as well. So I kind of, you know, I'll dress up as like Dumbledore, or I might be Lala, or Tinky Winky, or Jack Sparrow, or you know, whoever, and I'll go and run kids parties. I mean, I think a couple of years ago I was Batman one week, and then I was like Super Mario. So it's like every day you Mr. Ben, it's a different costume, and you get a postcode, and you might have a few kind of props and stuff, and then you just go and have a crazy event. And I think if people ask me, do you have any beliefs? I believe in punk. I believe in chaos. I like the idea that you don't know what you're going to be doing at the end of next week, or even at the end of today. And I live increasingly like that, just in the moment.
And do you know what? I feel like there's got to be a bit of that in me as well, because even though I like a routine, I mean, my calendar there behind me is just...
Your house is really, the space is beautifully maintained.
It's only because you're here.
I was expecting, you know, those hoarders, you know, when they live in that house, like books. I expected we were going to climbing over sort of bodies and papers and half assembled like kits, and then we'd kind of emerge into this hole, and there'd be these mics. But it's not that at all. It's quite...
It's nice. It's a nice space.
It's minimalist. It's almost Swedish, you know, and I love all things Swedish.
You expected me to be in a cellar with a drippy tap, didn't you?
I thought you were going to be in like a black and white prison uniform or something, you know, or there'd be people chained to the wall. But that's not how it is at all.
No.
There's fish in a tank.
Yeah, there's a fish in a tank that needs cleaning as well. Okay, right. So we've worked together at the prison for going on sort of 3 years now.
It's more like 5. We were back in 2016, 2017 was the first.
Yeah, I think I came in 2018. I think I came.
You were a bit later, yeah.
Halloween 2018. But yeah, we worked together for a while, and
yeah,
it's been a great time, man. They are like family, those guys. But we're here today to talk about podcasts.
We are, and I was just totally inspired by what you've been doing, and I was a bit of a noob, and I was like, man, I checked out your podcasts, and this is punk in a way. It's kind of like underground. I mean, a few years ago, with some uni students from Stafford, we set up this underground film movement, and it was like one of those things where somebody'd have a script, you'd get a postcode, you'd rock up, you'd shoot for a weekend, and then everybody would just disappear, and hopefully, at some point, Ben Chapman, mentioning no names, an edit would appear. And again, I just love that punk ethos. So I think podcast is punk, isn't it? And it's underground.
It is, because I mean, we had I'm trying to encourage you to go for a role with a production I'm working with, you rang me up and we chatted about it, but we spent more time talking about the podcast and stuff.
I was really hot for the pod. Yeah.
And the way I explain it is okay, so there's indie podcasts like mine, and if you're listening to this because I've called this podcast workshop, then you will understand. You know, you've made your own thing, you've done it with your own money or with whatever small sort of sponsorships you can gather, and you go out, you do it, and you can affect thousands of people by yourself, without no big companies, no corporations, no rules really, because you can swear, you can be bad on a podcast. I choose not to on the Biscuit, maybe not with the other podcast stuff I do, and no one can touch you.
Yeah,
and that is what's so rock and roll about it. I mean, now you're seeing huge corporations put together podcasts and things. I mean, Nerdist, they were a company that were put together and went big, huge, and then they sold out to a Chinese media company, blah, blah, blah. But they had like the biggest stars. They had like George Clooney and Seth Rogen and all these people come on and chat, and that was quite cool. But they went away. But now you're seeing like some huge A-list celebrities, football stars, all these kind of things create podcasts, and they're great, but they've got the money to do it. It's all about the indie.
Yeah, and I think the key for me is that mainstream media is dead. Kill your TV, listen to podcasts, because everything seems so controlled and contrived. And you're like, the music that I like came out of punk. It was that whole thing about people coming together, grassroots, and making something happen. And that's why I like Prison. And I kind of like the idea of it. I like the philosophy, and people who have got their ear to the ground work out what's going on. And another thing that's really interesting about what you do and brilliant about what you do is it's positive news. You're not talking about plague and death and misery and
politics
and slagging people off. You're basically saying, hey, there's this event, go support it, and it's brilliant. So I think that's one of the things that really maybe prick up my ears, was like, that needs to be celebrated.
Well, there's something about clickbait media, that really riles me. The kind of like, there's this terrible thing that's happened, nothing else, click on it or argue about it in the comments. I hate that so much. And there are local organisations that partake in things like that, and I hate it so much, because what they do is they start the fire and they sit back and watch the world burn, right? And I hate that so much. It's the
lowest common denominator, and it needs to be called out, and
especially when it came to the recent petrol crisis. I say crisis in inverted commas because it was made worse by the media. I mean, like, I don't without doubt, that if it wasn't for the news and the newspapers being like, "There's no petrol, there's a petrol crisis," it wouldn't have happened. It wouldn't have happened.
So what do you do? I mean, you just turn it off, don't you? And you listen to other things. I think that's the key thing. I'm not exactly a fan of the royal family, so I just figure, just turn them off. Just don't buy into that news cycle. Yeah, just zone into something else.
Yeah, and that's what we try to do at the Shrewsbury Biscuit, because it is all about being positive. Because we can't live behind rose-coloured, what's it,
rose-tinted spectacles.
There you go. That's how the phrase goes. But it's good to be able to disappear into something positive, and that's what I like to do. So what would you like to know about podcasts, man? How did you want to sort of start your own podcast? Is that what it is?
I definitely want to do it, and the things I'm interested in promoting most are the ideas of creativity, connectivity, and community. Okay. So I really feel like, my city is Lichfield. It's in Staffordshire, right? We're in Shropshire. I worked here for 10 years, and I love the place, but I moved back to where I'm from. And then sort of seeing and listening to what you were doing, I was thinking it would be really great to do this around Lichfield. So I was sort of saying, how do you support creativity, connectivity, and community?
Okay, so the community is very easy, because it's all Shropshire-based, Shrewsbury-based mainly, but we're covering things sort of further afield in Shropshire, and people need to know what's going on. So we cover events, we cover charities, we cover sort of independent businesses, things like that. So that's the community right there, right?
Yeah.
And we're very much part of a few big sort of Facebook groups where we can share our links and things, right? When it comes to connectivity and creativity, The way I explain it is, there's nothing better than stepping inside the head of an artist or a writer or an author or a musician and taking a good walk around and having a good look at what makes them tick,
genius.
you know? And, also part of the connectivity is I started the Shrewsbury Biscuit because I knew nothing about the town. So I was learning about the town while the listeners were. And that's kind of like I'm not going to say it's a genius idea because I don't think it is, but I mean, it is, but I'm a bit more humble than that. It's a good idea.
It works. And I think if you've got your ear to the ground, I mean, people are coming to you now, aren't they?
Yeah.
Like you were talking the other day about, quite influential people knew about the biscuit. So just say a little bit about that. You're being approached and people are aware of the biscuit.
It's more about, it's very embarrassing for me to talk about, but like the emails I love that the emails come to me and I have the choice now. And this is what I went to Lincoln Davis this morning to do a shoot because they're making a promo video, and I was chatting to them there and I was like, I'm having to pick and choose what I can and can't do now. And look at my diary. My calendar is ridiculous. I can't move. My schedule's crazy. And I love that so much. But what I think you're talking about is apparently Spotify know who I am, and I heard this from my friend at McGinley, and I've mentioned it a couple of times, and I was like, what? And he rang me. He was like, I'm so excited now. I'm so excited. That's how he talks. He talks like he has a beard, if that makes sense.
A hugely bearded.
Oh, he has a beard. Yeah.
Like Brian Blessed. Yes.
Oh, Alex, he's a Manchester way, so he's like, oh, Alex, you need to check out I was chatting to the lady from Spotify, and she knows who you are and what. And I was just kind of like, what? She needs to, and the reason being is he sent me this article as well that was just 2 weeks ago. He's talking about, how I was just saying, actors, sports stars, video games, movies, whatever it is, people making podcasts about everything. But when it comes to local podcasts about an area, it's all about the movement of information and how actually valuable that is, and this is where the biscuit comes into play. So if you're listening to this and thinking you're on the kind of fence about giving me money for sponsorship, you definitely need to, because what we're doing at the biscuits now is very important.
So you're, in a way, like my mate Carl Barton, a great friend of mine, was a plugger. In a way, you're kind of plugging.
Yeah.
And you are kind of just trying to hype stuff up. It's about situations, events, it's happening. I mean, for me in the community over in Lichfield, there's quite a number of kind of like musical companies and acting companies and photographers and stuff. And the whole thing is about following what's going on and supporting it. And I think what's happened with COVID, is that everybody's just retreated into these little boxes. And we've almost been like in prison, haven't we? We've been in prison for the last 2 years, pretty much. And then people are now just beginning to venture out. And like I've been to a couple of shows this week. I went to see Legally Blonde in Sutton.
Yeah, I saw you did that, yeah.
Yeah, and I went up to Stoke to see a friend of mine, Imogen, and she was just doing this new musical called Unforgotten Heroes, and it was really emotional to be out amongst people again. And I thought, what was really interesting was that people weren't really talking and really uncertain about approaching one another. So the need to kind of rebuild community and get people talking is massively important in every town, village, city, to get people, focusing on positive stuff and events and going and supporting their mates. And I think like if you could be part of that positive news cycle where instead of just slagging and destroying and clickbaiting, you're actually saying so-and-so's got a photography exhibition, it's £3, go and support it, it's half an hour out your day, and go talk to people. And I think that's the great thing about prison. It's kind of like speed dating, isn't it? Where you're going in there and you're talking to everybody and you've got to have a relationship with everybody. And if you're I'm a tour guide, my job is schmoozing. Well, my job is trying not to kill people, but it's also, you're telling stories, you're storytelling, and I think prison's about that. And anybody who's worth a damn has got great stories, and you sit down with them and they'll tell you great stories, and that's what kind of hooks you in. So that's kind of what I was interested in with the biscuit.
And I love that you've kind of been drawn towards me for that reason, because I like the idea that the Shrewsbury Biscuit creates an inspiration to go out there and create community podcasts, because like you said, it is important to communicate with one another. And I was chatting to someone the other day and they were like, the museum's free now. And I was like, what? Yeah, the museum, they just waived all the prices. It's free to go in. I was like, I didn't know that. Now we do on the Shrewsbury Biscuit, because you just heard it. It's about connecting the dots, isn't it? And Definitely. If you can take that to Lichfield and create something positive, do it. Everybody should absolutely do what I'm doing, because, like I said, lots of negativity sometimes get blurred between blurred lines, or whatever it is, stuck behind a wall. So if you get someone on there to talk about, crazy races that's happening soon, the soapbox racing that's happening in Shrewsbury, had them on, talked about an amazing event that we're going to be at. And I've just spoken to Alan Lewis now, who's a guy who creates charity runs at 10Ks, 5Ks, things like this. Now we know all about him and stuff. I love it because of that, because we're giving away this important information.
But it seems like it's totally brought you to life. It's kind of like, it's like you've awakened, haven't you? And you just thought, I can make a difference from my house. I mean, this isn't a paid gig, is it?
No.
It's not. As you say, you get dribs and drabs of
sponsorship, but
charity. Oh yeah, they've got sponsorship. But you're a carer. You've got a life where you've got to pay bills and what have you. Mm-hmm. So that makes it pretty heroic for me, is that you're dedicated to it, and you're obviously making an impact. So just share a bit about how people feed back to you, if they like what you do or they don't like what you do.
It's really difficult, really, because when it comes to social media, people like to scroll and just press a button rather than press a button, type something and send it, right? So that's how quick social media has to be, right? When it comes to going, hey guys, what did you think of the Shrewsbury Biscuit? Drop your comment right here. People aren't going to necessarily do that.
What about people sending, increasingly, like I send snippets of recorded sound now. You know what I mean? In Messenger, you can send that. You've got the facility just to pull those little snippets out and sort of drop them into a sort of like a reel or something?
Well, I'm looking at my social media, and I'm bringing someone in to help me with it soon, because I need to reorganize and reinvent myself on social media, but sort of reuse. I want to recycle our content. So like little bits, like, when we first opened up the podcast just then with loads of energy, take that 15 seconds, chuck it on TikTok or something, because people like that sort of thing.
So that's an interesting thing. It's kind of like, there was a great band from the 80s and 90s called Pop Will Eat Itself, and they used to sample their old records. So it was like this constant, the new stuff would incorporate the old stuff and it would move forward, and then you'd sample everything over and over again. So it's that kind of endless sort of repetition with a difference as you kind of move through time. So you've got to pull out the really interesting stuff, haven't you? And shine a light on it. So in 30 seconds or 7 seconds or 3 seconds, you say, well, what's the biscuit about? What's your mission statement? And you've got to be able to punch it out and almost kind of become a movement, do you think? You've got to get people hot to come here and sit down with you.
I'm no expert when it comes to I really am not when it comes to content creation, because there are people out there that make millions on creating YouTube videos, and I'm not anywhere near that at the moment. In fact, I'm just trying to kickstart our YouTube now, because we haven't used it. I'm starting to release regular videos, and they're trying to get people to subscribe to my YouTube.
But what you've got, which is amazing, and when I was working back with Lichfield Youth Theatre about 30 years ago, and I said then, I don't know if they did, but I said you need to create an archive. You need to record all your shows, because 30 years down the line, they've evolved into this incredible engine over the 34 years they've been in existence, with incredible shows. But it would just be phenomenal to have, like a filmic record, an archive. And we can do that now. And you've got that archive. And I suppose now it's just a question about how you use it. And it's about different formats. And is it about the edit now? The way you kind of distill things down?
I think every show is as individual as a fingerprint, right? So like every show's got its own identity, and it depends what kind of audience you're trying to grab. If you're trying to grab, for me, it's all about the commute. For me, it's all about like having someone on in the car. If I'm on your car right now, how'd it go? And make sure you concentrate on your driving. Indicate at a roundabout, right? So it's all about, for me, is sitting down, relaxing, and having something on in the background. Whereas if you're doing something for young kids, it's like, hey kids, how's it going? We got this today. Oh my God, it's so flash.
Different energy.
Bam, bam, bam. You've got to think about what you're trying to sell. So if you're starting your own podcast now and you're listening to this, think about what it is you're talking about, okay? So if you're talking about classical music, you might want to bring it down a bit. Or you might even want to jazz it up a bit. If you're talking about classic music, why not be a little bit crazy and throw a bit of like fusion, that kind of... Because, there's something really cool about... what was it I was going to say? there was something I did that was just completely unorthodox, and oh no, this is the idea I was thinking of, and it's open there. Matthew Howarth, who runs the Battle of Shrewsbury. How's it going, Matthew? I've had this idea of doing history podcasts, but for adults and completely uncensored, right?
Yeah.
So that it's for people that have got no time for censorship. So like if there's something really grotesque that's happened during the Tudor times and there's lots of bad language involved in that, throw it all in. I don't care. Let's not be up and stuffy. And in 1400s, yes, there was this absolutely grotesque battle. I can't go into the details right now. No, let's do that, and we can swear and let's have some fun with it, you know. And I mentioned that to Matthew, and he was just like, "Brilliant, let's do it." Because that's mixing it up, isn't it?
Well, you know, for me, I was just talking with my artist buddy Reeves. We've sort of been working on his autobiography for the last couple of years, and he's finally bringing it to conclusion. And he was talking about directing Simon Cadell from Hello, Hello, or helping direct Simon Cadell in this version of Hamlet. And he had him kind of isolated in like a rehearsal room, and he talked about Hamlet in terms of a certain motion, and he was sort of trying to teach him this idea of, you know, have the thought, create the word, and then the action. And I think it was a really simple kind of formula, but I kind of like that. So you have a thought, create the word, and then the action. And I really love the idea that from the podcasts you get actions. So the thought is there, i.e. the idea is bubbling around, then the expression is there because we're having a conversation, and then from the conversation people will go, yeah, I'm going to do something like that.
Yeah.
And I love the idea of it being a route to persuasion and inspiration. So if somebody was thinking about something, if somebody was thinking about starting a band, or somebody was thinking about doing the drama project, and somebody like wanted to do Hamlet, or somebody wanted to do a play they'd written or a new musical, you could talk to them, and they could come on and they could talk about what they'd done and why they'd done it. And when they were looking for a cast or they were looking for a venue, and they had no money, and they were kind of touting for people to come out and do stuff. I mean, in 2013, I set up with my best friend Alan Rowe, Good Road Productions, and our mission statement was that we wanted to do community events, but we wanted to do self-generated stuff. So we wrote our own sort of plays and put them on, and we wanted it to be like intergenerational. So we wanted the kid, we wanted the parent, and we wanted the granddad or the grandma on the stage. We didn't care how good they were. We, if nobody else would touch them, we'd have them. You know what I mean? And they'd come on and they'd do our shows. And, it was all about energy and enthusiasm. So we knew that we were kind of at the lower end of the tent pole, shall we say, in terms of sometimes what we put out, but we gave it our all. And from that, a lot of people would then go on and do other things, bigger shows. Legally Blonde the other night, one of the kids who turned out for us, an amazing young girl called Emily Glasgow, was dancing and singing, and she was one of the best things on the stage. And she did a turn with us, and I'm not saying that she's where she is now because of us, but we were just part of her little fossil record. And hopefully we just, we arrived at a time when she needed us and could use us. So again, if you can create a platform for people in that community of Shrewsbury or Lichfield where people want to do stuff, but they don't know how to go about doing it, they can kind of put out an advert, in a sense, in their conversation and say, I really want to do this thing. I've got an idea for a show. So it's like an elevator pitch, and then they can bring people in, and hell, before you know it, people are out there and doing it again. Because I don't think society is just going to restart after COVID. I think there's so much nervousness, and I think the first pandemic, which is the virus, is wherever it is. I don't think it's over, but there's a second pandemic, which I think is going to be to do with mental health.
I agree.
And talking to my buddy who's a psychiatrist, and he was saying so many people now are terrified to go out and interact with other people, because if they interact with the wrong person, it could be a death sentence. So getting communities rebuilt, and I think the pod and the notion of podcast is important because of that.
Yeah, I feel like there's a responsibility there to try and sort of help people out as much as I can. And I've always felt that anyway, but with the pandemic, I talk about the pandemic an awful lot. And I feel like people are probably going, oh, there he goes again. But I feel like it's one of the most important things that's happened to us
in our lives.
And tomorrow I'm speaking to Dr. Pearson, who is talking about the anxiety of going back to the office. Right?
Exactly, yeah.
And my wife She's. I've kicked my wife into Timmy's room. She sat.
He didn't kick her, you know. She went willingly.
Just to explain the setup right now, Timmy's got this huge cabin bed, right, and underneath the cabin bed is a little desk. All right.
Right, Timmy is his son. It's not a pet rat or a pet anaconda. All right. Okay.
It's not a mini biscuit. He's 6 years old. He's got this massive cabin bed, and there's a desk underneath, this square box thing. It's at the desk, and that's where my wife sat doing it. I'm very sorry. I'm very grateful to your wife, so thank you for doing that. Do you have an event, business, or promotion that needs advertising? Well, the Shrewsbury Biscuit is here for you. With listeners local, nationwide, even worldwide, we have the perfect place to get the word out. And the Shrewsbury Biscuit podcast is a registered CIC, so you'd be helping us while we help you. Drop us a line at shrewsburybiscuitpodcast@gmail.com and speak to us today. The Shrewsbury Biscuit podcast, the voice of Shrewsbury. And she's started a job. I can't say the company's name in case put the company into disrepute. But she's only been to the office once.
Yeah.
And she's been there for less than a year. Do you know what I mean? So that must be so daunting for a lot of people, because there are companies now selling off their offices now because people are just more comfortable working at home. That's weird, right?
Well, it's a revolution, isn't it? It's happened as a result of the pandemic.
Yeah.
And I don't think we've had time to process that. And I think, like, you know, for me, art at its best will reflect what's going on at the time, and it will ask a question, and it won't give you an easy answer. It sometimes leaves things hanging. So, I mean, I really like the fact that there's new work out there. I love the fact that we've got a huge tradition, and there's amazing plays going back to 1600 and before, and all of that. But part of me just craves new work, something that's about now.
I've been one of my favourite bands I mentioned in the last podcast is Frank Carter and the Rattlesnakes, right?
Yeah,
definitely listen to them, especially if you like your punk music. It's got a bit of shouty, sweary stuff in it. And his latest album, Sticky, it's all about the pandemic, right? And there's lyrics in there that are actually heartbreaking. He's I don't ever want to lock down again, and you can feel it. They feel the pain in his voice. I'm like, wow, because for a creative, for an artist, for a musician, for an actor, for a podcaster, you know, people that's going out there and sort of documenting the world or being part of it or creating it, you know, it must have been difficult, you know.
But it's about expression. And I think, like, artists are here to rattle cages. They're here.
Oh, I love to rattle a good cage.
Yeah, to be provocative, and like the Prison Break stuff that we do is about that. And I gravitate to work where that is edgy, that is provocative, that you do get a reaction and a response from. And even if people hate you or hate the work, they think about what you're doing, and they may change their response to the world. They may go and do something different. So I suppose it's all about where you want to place yourself. If you want to be liked and loved, then you appear in Disney musicals, and that's great. That's where you want to be, and that's what you want to do. But Disney ain't me.
Disney would love you, I think. You make a good villain. One of my favourite things to do at Prison Break is go up to somebody, because it's always explained to them that they're in an immersive event. They need to create their own sort of character and sort of take part, right? So as soon as they've had that conversation, I'll walk up to him and I'll be like, "Oi, what are you in prison for?" And they'll start to explain. I'll be like, "I don't care," and walk off. Yeah. And just leave them completely stunned.
Leave them hanging. This is it. I think it's all about confounding expectations, isn't it? It's about playing with that. And people who do that, I love that. And I like to feel uneasy. I mean, I was in Scotland once, and about 2007, and there was two live events that I went to back, and there were talks with authors that I really liked. One was by a playwright called Harold Pinter, who was renowned for these Pinteresque silences and this kind of uneasiness and paranoia. And to listen to Pinter talk, he generated that atmosphere in the room, and he put you on edge. And the way he kind of paused and listened to the interviewer's questions, and then would be really kind of insidiously turning the interviewer's questions upside down. It was like how he wrote. And then the next session was with this famous Irish poet called Seamus Heaney. And it was like being in the presence of Socrates. He was kind of august and he was smart, and you felt you're in the presence of greatness. And he said something I remember, and he said, we're living now in a shadowed age, he said. And I just thought, God, yeah, it's an age of shadows. But he had a completely different vibe, and you were easy with him, and you could sit and just listen to that wonderful lilt in Irish brogue and the way he told stories. But I love the fact that they were back to back. One was the kind of paranoia kind of culture of Pinter, where nobody is what they appear to be. And I've done a couple of Pinter plays, and it's all about unease, and it's all about, you know, things that make your skin creep, and making you realise that everybody's unreliable. Everybody's got an agenda. Nobody tells you the truth. And then Heaney comes on, and he, you know, even though he's talking about, you know, the darkness in the current times, he's like a ray of light. Whereas Pinter's just like saying there is no light. It's just dark, and you've got to survive. So I love that. I love the contrast anyway. And I thought they were great speakers.
I like having the license to be someone else, and it's a deep reflection on sort of me anyway. Whether it's the podcast or whether it's
but you're not one person, and I think that's, I've often thought, why are actors? Why do they do what they do other than for adulation and loads of cash? And I think one of the things is, like, you're not comfortable in a singular identity. You get the sense that, you know, you were born into something, but you could have been something else, and it just gets you get to explore, you know, so many different
subconsciously
things.
I think we're all different anyway, because I mean, like, you're a different person to the person you are in the office, in the car, when you're swearing at the person in front of you, when you're in bed late at night. You know, everybody's a little bit different, aren't they? You know, and you're allowed to do that. I feel like if you can play with that a little bit, and you give yourself license to be able to play with that, and be a little bit childish at times, and a little bit explorative in sort of how you do things. I mean, I've just been sat before my interviews today. I've been sat creating sort of liners for the radio, and one of them is just like a guy going, because I got a voice changer thing on there, and he sounds like a beast, and he's going naughty talk. He's like, he's like, and it's like, I'm supposed to do it. You know, doing silly little voices like that.
No, but
so
I
liberating.
think, I kind of think there's part of you that is like me, like a cartoon.
Yeah.
There are elements of us that are just cartoons, aren't we? We love to cartoon, and I think, like, that's just that endless play of possibilities, and the people who make you laugh do funny voices and do crazy stuff, and they're never predictable. I think that's the point, and I think, like, that's what you want in a community or a culture. You want people who've got any talent. You want to kind of get them on a stage and get them doing stuff. And I think that's what pod is. It's another stage, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. And I think it's very hard to sometimes find reminders on why you are good at what you're doing, right? Because we are just having a conversation at the end of the day, and you're like, well, what's so special about Alex Whiteley? Why do you need it? And then you get someone walk into a room and go, oh yeah, I'm coming on the podcast, yeah, and then they sit down and they just die inside, and they're like, yeah, and they forget everything. They can't talk behind a microphone, and then I'm kind of like, hey, welcome to the Shrewsbury Biscuit, and you're kind of like, that's why I'm good at what I'm doing. And I think we all need those reminders. I mean, if you're starting to do a podcast or content creation, you need to have that confidence in yourself.
I have it?
Yeah, you do. Of course you do. But I feel like it's flawless with you. I mean, like, I don't know whether you project yourself when you're around other people, or if you're a different person when you're on your own. You're like, oh, that was so much hard work. I can just imagine you, Stuart, going into your apartment and just throwing on a big, massive cloak and just being like, to bed.
No, if I'm in my apartment, I'm drawing or I'm writing or I'm performing, you know, and I work for 16 hours a day because I'm acutely aware, having had a near-death experience in Morocco in 1994.
Oh, what happened there?
Well, I just got real sick, and I was just on the edge of life and death for about 3 days, and I thankfully got to a doctor, and I got saved. But how it changed me was it made me aware that life's over so quick, man. I'm 50. Can you believe it? I'm 50 years of age. I feel 18. I feel and I'm just aware just how quickly it goes. You've got to use every second that you've been given, and that the people I love are people who are aware of that. And I recently been working with this Swedish intern, and I took her out on a walking day, and we ended up going up this sort of sheer cliff face, and she looked up at me with terror in her eyes, and she's like, we could die here. I said, yeah, we could. Every step could be our last step. Don't walk on the rocks, walk on the grass. Focus. If there's a gust of wind, just crouch. We'll get through this. And we did. And we came down off of that cliff, and she got down, and she was just so exhilarated. And she'd had this terrible situation in life that she had to take care of. And she, when she got down, she just took care of it. And it was kind of like she'd been confronted with all the elements and she'd dealt with it. She hadn't freaked out. She'd stayed focused. She hadn't panicked. And she realised she was alive. And at the end of it, she was like, I want to do this. This is what I want my life to be. I want this excitement. And I was like saying, okay, well, you've got to come back on your own and do it with people. And just a few days ago, family came over from Sweden and she took them out on her own in a car. And she took him out and she took him up a sort of hidden valley in Glencoe, and she did it. So the whole thing about she came out, I kind of mentored her a bit, taught her to read a map, and then I said, babe, the only way you can kind of move forward is to do it for yourself. And she went and did it. And she took the most amazing photographs. She wants to be a photographer. And I just basically said, you just got to do it. And the difference between those that do and those that don't is just confidence and belief. And don't let any criticism or negativity deflect you. Stay on target. But it means you got to work. Every day you get up and you do what you got to do, and just keep doing it. Keep giving the positive out, and you're going to make it. And I think that's another thing. My background, like yours, is what used to be called special needs. So working with kids who are often damaged or broken, sometimes because of the way they were born, sometimes because of the ways that they've been raised and what people have done to them. So the whole thing about getting behind people and trying to help them rebuild and positive messages, that was a massive part. That's what I come out of, in the first job that I did. And I think I'm still doing the same thing. And I still believe, like, all the kids that I worked with up in the early days, it was like they were a reflection of the broken bits in me. I didn't have a great adolescence. I had a bit of a kind of breakthrough kind of situation where I just lost I had no direction. So to kind of find my way again and get on a path, when I kind of went back to sort of university quite late, in my late 20s, and I did a degree in psychology. And I've spoken about this before, but I worked with my friend Paul Leishman, who's visually impaired, but I was his guide and his note taker, and we formed this really tight unit. And we both got through it together. He helped me, I helped him. And it was kind of like that road back. And I think that changed me. And it makes me passionate for community. It makes me passionate for people helping and reaching out for each other and working through the arts. I think that's, for me, the 21st century is just such a damaging place to be. It makes us sick and messes us up in all kinds of ways. And you've got to find a way of doing this century, this moment. You found your way, and I think it's an amazing way. And when I work with you, the vitality and the life and the joy that comes off of you, and that's because you found this. So I think it ain't just something you do. It's almost like a philosophy of life, isn't it?
Yeah, and it's about. I think you got to remember why you're doing this, right? Because I'm not no Joe Rogan, I'm not no Mark Maron or any big podcaster. I've got a few hundred listeners around the world, and people do recognise me from time to time, but I'm not like this big. I was watching, I introduced my wife to People Just Do Nothing last night. Have you seen that? Corrupt FM. Oh. Blah, blah, it's a BBC TV show. It's about these guys that got a pirate radio show, and they think they're like superstars, but they're all idiots, every single one of them. And there's this famous clip, and it's like, how far does Corrupt FM reach? He goes, all over East London, yeah? Well, maybe not quite East London. Just the estate. It reaches the estate, and like they're doing this like call-in competition thing, and they're like, call in for the answer with this question and to win this perfume, this aftershave, and no one rings in. they're like sitting there like, oh my god, and I feel like, am I that guy? Is that me? Because
the thing of it is, if it was, you'd still do it, and that makes you
and that's the
kind
thing.
of heroic and absurd at the same time. Because I think about the number of gigs whereby you put so much into it, and maybe 5 people go, and you've rehearsed it for 12 weeks. You put 1,000 hours into it, and like 5 people go watch it, and it's not by anybody's standards considered a success, but you emerge from it and you say, I loved it and it was worth it to me. And it's like you just keep doing it.
And it leads to a very important point as well. If I'll say this to any podcaster, right? Don't look at the figures too much and don't look too much into it, because when I first started my first ever podcast, Thor's Kin podcast, it's a cheeky show. It was a cheeky show, right? It was on the borderline of probably very, very too much inappropriate. But anyway, when I first started it, I would look at the analytics every single day. Oh my God, we've had 5 more downloads. Oh my God, we've had 10 more downloads. And I would do it all the time. And then it stops, levels out, and then you kind of start hurting yourself a little bit inside. You're kind of like, oh my God, I'm not very successful and sort of stuff. You Suck, as my other show, it did kind of get stale and stagnant a little bit, especially on social media. But I looked at the figures the other day, and we haven't recorded in ages, and it's still going. It's still doing really well. And I'm like, what? So like sometimes you can punish yourself a little bit more. So you can find a host, Podbean. I use Podbean. There's loads of us out there. Search for podcast hosts, right? You pay a small fee. You can do it for free as well. There are free options, but I pay because I create a hell of a lot of content, right? Yeah. And then you have the option to see who's listened. Well, not who's listened. We have to get all your details if you listen to my show, where they've listened to in the world, and how many people have listened to, right? Get a gauge. Watch it. Look at it once a month. Yeah. Look at it once a month, and don't get stuck into that. Do something because you enjoy it, because that's what draws people in. And I got that caught in that trap with You Suck. I was kind of like, oh my God, we're not getting the listeners, what's the point? And I was getting really fed up and stuff. But we've taken a few weeks out. We're kind of pulling the wires out and stuff like that, looking at what works, what doesn't work, and we're going to come back and we're going to have a crazy good time, because that's what we're doing it for. That's the whole reason behind it.
I think sometimes you need to step away. Because it's like you're too close, your nose is pressed up against the glass, you can't see what's going on, and you need to revitalise.
You can't cheat at this thing, and people are trying so hard. I'm an admin for one of the biggest podcast groups on Facebook, right? It's huge. Tens of thousands of people on it, and I see it every single day. Like for like, or comment for comment. You probably see it with like YouTube videos as well, where people like, what, I'll watch mine and you watch yours, and I'm kind of like, that's really terrible. And it's because the way the analytics work with Facebook, with Podbean, with YouTube and stuff, if they see someone's listened to a podcast for 5 seconds, right, and there's loads of people doing that, they will drop you to the bottom of the pile.
Right.
If loads of people like your Facebook page and they don't actually go on it, they'll drop you to the bottom of the pile, because that's how analytics work. It's a ratio.
That's the algorithm.
That's the algorithm, right? So you can really damage your. If you say you create a podcast Facebook page, right, and you do what I did, I'm guilty of it as well. Invite all your friends, invite everybody, right? Get them all in there, and nobody visits them. Then nobody will see your posts. Facebook will think you're invaluable, and they'll chuck you in the trash pile. You will damage what you've created. Yeah,
but the key thing is, I'll go back to what I said before, you've got an archive. And I suppose, I don't know if you call it podcasts, but Russell Brand's truths. Right now, to begin with, I was a bit like, oh, Russell. I mean, I loved him in the early days, and then I hated him, and then I loved him, and then I hated him. And then I've gone back to seeing what he's doing now. And I like the step that he's taken. And I like the fact that he has an archive of works, and sometimes it can be like a couple of years before people think, oh, he's got a great body of work there. And maybe the edit is you drop certain ones and other ones sort of come more to the fore. So the stuff that Russell Brand did, like with Jordan Peterson, who's a kind of major sort of philosophical figure of the moment, an American academic who's come in for a ton of crap, is really interesting. And what's great about their conversation is they don't agree, but the way they disagree with each other is really respectful. So you just don't get into that, kind of bitching.
Not Alex Jones and Joe Rogan screaming at each other across the desk. Yeah.
Oh, ladies, it's like, please, just wind it in. And it's kind of like, there's something like, I remember reading a biography of Oscar Wilde where he talked about developing the Oxford manner. And the Oxford manner was this thing whereby you could disagree with people. And you could think they were idiots, but you were always respectful. And I think that unfortunately has gone by the by. The whole thing about respect. And even if you think somebody's a total idiot, even if they think you're a total idiot, there's just a sort of respect. And I miss that, And I think I like punk and I like rudeness when it's funny.
I like being rude too.
Yeah. We're rude to each other, but, there's love.
Oh, yeah. So, I can't really explain our roles, really, but, our job at the prison is to hate each other generally, and
but I've never had so much fun hating anybody in my life as you, because I play a teacher, right, who's an ex-con, and we can't say the name of your character, or can we?
We've mentioned it before, but I don't want to mention too much about the roles for because
it would spoil it. Yeah. But let's just say that we have an antagonistic relationship.
Yeah.
Leave it at that. But it's fun because Again, I never know where you're going to come in from because he comes in from new angles all the time. And I think doing this, you've gotten to this place where you think on your feet, don't you?
Yeah.
You've got to. It's
all improv to me. This is.
Yeah.
And in fact, we used to do a lot of improv on. We did it on Reduced to Clear, which is a production we were following, and I used to do it on USOC. We used to have okay, we had a wheel, and you'd spin it, and then it would land on an emotion or a thing you got to do, and you've got to do it on the podcast because I used to get a lot of people coming to me for help and developing their podcast or if they're a podcaster and stuff. So then I'd be like, okay, here's a pencil. Talk about this for a minute. Go, because you've got to be able to do that. Right, because you can't be like if you run out of something to say, you can't be like,
you haven't got. You can't leave dead air. You've got to be there. I mean, the Santa thing. I mean, sometimes when I work it, you have 120 families in a day, and they'll come in, and you've got to use what is to hand. I mean, I used to hate those the shows, the improv shows on TV. I used to find them so hammy, and they were so self-congratulatory. But I loved that. It's like gladiatorial combat. Sometimes people come in all different accents, all different vibes. I mean, some families are just out and out sinister. They're not nice, but you've got to work with that. And some, it's just like feeling the love in the room. It's just incredible. So people say, don't you get bored? Well, no, it's a different show. With every time somebody comes at the grotto and sits down, people say, you're a grown man, why did you do this thing? I said, it's like the prison. It's just so exciting where you can go within the kind of, limits of time and limits of the role. You can go in some really tripped out zones. You know what I mean? And we just go into the most crazy zones, and people walk out and say, "Did we just talk to Santa about quantum physics?" And I think that's the thing. You confound expectations if you do what everybody else does. And I just we did a promo thing the other day where I'm part of my Santa-ing is I'm doing it at a farm, Coton Farm, out in Whittington, just for a few days, and it's a stable, it's a riding stable. So they get me on a horse. And the thing you don't know about me is, at the age of 6, I was out with my grandfather and my elder brother, and we were walking down this hill. This horse follows us and kicks me in the head and knocks me out. Right? So I always maintain that whatever came back wasn't human. You know what I mean? But so I'm kind of like, I've got to get on this horse. And it's in the barn, and I've got to go behind it. And I'm like, Helen, it doesn't kick because I'm having a flashback. So they get me. I'm in my Santa garb. They get me on a horse, and you need to think on your feet. So no, I've lost my ruddy reindeer. Anybody seen the reindeer? They've run off. I've got to get on this horse and go looking for them. So we kind of found a way into it, and it was just something we did on the hoof, if you'll pardon the pun. They filmed it and they put it out. And it may have gone viral. We might have 3 hits. Who knows? But I think that's the joy of being creative and liking just creating in the moment. You do it, you forget about it, you move on.
And I feel like it helps you as well if you're not. I mean, when I first started doing the biscuit, I used to make reams and reams of notes. Right, I'd have like 3 pages of notes. And especially when I spoke to Charlie Adlard, I had like 4 or 5 pages of notes when I spoke to him. This is the co-creator of The Walking Dead in my house, and I'm going like, oh my God. And Tom is like safely in
Were you
Vermont.
starstruck? Come on.
A little bit. No, I admit, maybe not so much on the day because I got myself in the zone. But I do sometimes get like the thing is with this with what I do is I speak to celebrities all the time. This is me bigging myself up. This is a journey I have been on, right? Where yes, when Charlie Adlard came round my house, I was a little bit nervous, and when I've spoken to we did a comic Salopia. Shout out to Shane Chebsey, who helped organise that amazing event, and. We got thrown in the deep end. They were like, we give us a studio for 2 days, and when people come out of these comic book like panels, they come straight into our studio, and we'd interview them half the time, not knowing who they were, right? And Jamali Maddox sat with me. He's a comedian with a big bushy beard. He's very popular, very famous. Does Channel 4 documentaries and stuff, and I don't watch terrestrial TV. He sat down, and I was like, so what do you do, Jamali? He's like, I'm on the telly. And I was like, okay, we need to do something quickly. So that's me digging myself out of a hole.
How did you do it, man?
I just remembered that he's just like me. So he's a human being just like me. And that Jamali Maddox interview was a turning point for me, genuinely, because I was kind of like...
Was it what alcoholics call a moment of clarity?
Yeah, I think so.
You were struck by lightning.
He's probably an idiot just as much as I am. Do you know what I mean? The same as Charlie Adlard, same as any celebrity. They're just as much as...
But you're arriving with an anxiety about the fact that they're greater than you are.
No.
Well, what's the anxiety about people meeting celebrities? Why do they go to the mush?
Well, this is the thing, isn't it? Why? Why do we do that? And this is the discipline I've had to learn. And, there's so many amazing stories that I've talked about on the Biscuit, like at the Shrewsbury, the Flower Show, right?
Yeah.
The event organizer comes up to me, she's like, can you do an interview with Scouting for Girls, which were a big bang in the noughties, right? Scouting for Girls were huge. And I was kind of like, okay. So me and Shane were walking towards, and I was kind of like, oh my God. And I was like, oh my God, what am I going to do? I'm going to write this, and I'm going to write these notes and everything. And I got my notebook, and I wrote loads of all these questions. I went to them, got my microphone out, did the interview. I didn't use one of the questions in the notebook. I just worried myself for no reason. They were nice guys. I remember standing at the stage, because they were sitting watching this bike display thing before they went on. And before they went on to play, they came and spoke to me. And I remember seeing them sat on the stage looking at me. And there was something inside me that went, they hate me. I'm press. They hate the press. And
right.
I thought they were side-eyeing me. I thought, oh my God, this is going to be terrible. And this is just my anxiety going, you're an idiot, you're an idiot, you're an idiot. When they came down, they were nice guys, just normal, down-to-earth people like me. And, you got to learn that, Everybody you speak to is human.
Yeah.
All right? And that's the most important thing.
I don't think I'm fazed by people. I just love the moment and the interaction. And you want people to be exciting. And if they're not, they're not.
So I think some people, some like, I'm going to say normal people, as not in an offensive way, but someone that isn't worth millions because they make something. But sometimes a normal person can leave you starstruck, and it's because you're in awe of who they are as a person. There are people that come on my show every now and again, and I'm kind of like, I find it hard to speak to them because of how amazing I think they are as a human person. And it doesn't matter if they're famous, if they're a celebrity, whatever. And sometimes I get a bit like, wow. Like I am not worthy.
Yeah, but you've still got to talk to them. You've still got to communicate, and you've got to celebrate what's great about them.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Yeah. And then your life might be small in comparison to them, much bigger. But compared to you, your life might be bigger than other people. So it's having a bit of humility in it and just seeing it for what it is.
Exactly.
But I just wanted to flag up something there. Not all your casts are in the house. Some of them are out in the field. You're out and that is something I see more and more on your Facebook promote. Is that you're out in the field. So what do you prefer? Do you like being out in the field, or is it is it more challenging?
So this is where I've learned my journey, right? This is where I've developed, is because I remember to this day standing on Pride Hill in Shrewsbury with a Tascam microphone, and I wanted to speak to people about shopping independently for Christmas. Where were they doing their Christmas shopping? And I couldn't get anyone to stop to talk to me. And at that moment, that thing ruined me. And mentally speaking, I really hated shoving a microphone in people's face.
Yeah.
And I really do still today, but I've learned how to manage it. Excuse me. burnt down the microphone. So like I'll go to events now, and I'll have my microphone, and I'll need to get reactions from people, and it's a case of I have to have a few minutes just to
tune in,
pump myself into it, because that is the worst thing for me. If people know who I am, I mean, like now it's different because people are like, it's a Shrewsbury Biscuit, and they'll come and talk to me, right?
That's really interesting. I used to work as, I know it's hard to believe now, but I used to work as the thin controller, not the fat controller.
I remember that.
But the thin controller of Drayton Manor. And the thing was, me and the fat controller, well, Sir Topham Hatt, we used to work at the hotel in the first part of the morning. And we always used to get a fried breakfast. That was part of one of the perks of getting in early. So after a while, you couldn't really tell the fat controller from the thin controller, But we used to do 5 shows a day. Right, and you used to go up on this kind of balcony, and behind the balcony was this like green room, and you were working 12-hour days, 6 days a week. And I remember I used to work with an amazing clown called Sean Rollison, one of the most incredible entertainers I've ever met, busiest, hardest working mate. Kester Lewis was Sir Topham Hatt, the fat controller, a genius, wonderful performer, great friend. He's working out in Dubai now, but you were so knackered a lot of the time. People would just go in the green room and everybody would just flop down. And like puppets when they're just sort of left. We were like de-string puppets, right? And we'd sit in the green room, faces as long as sin, exhausted. And then the start of music would go. And it would be like, we'd just spring
back up.
And the door would open, you'd run out, welcome to Thomas Land. And you'd be straight in the song. And it was like, it was the funniest thing, because people could be completely just deflated and off, and if people were to see you backstage, and Sean's face, he had this sort of hangdog expression, and it was like, oh my god, I've been doing this for so long, I'm insane. And then you get out on the balcony and it'd just be like whoom,
electric.
And you go out 5 people or 5,000 people sometimes. I went out one day, Alex, right? Somebody had dropped down dead. Somebody was dead.
Oh my god!
And everybody's out there with the phones filming, and Kess was off with, and the person who died was a carer. So Kess had gone out with the child that the person was minding, and one of the then owner's sons came over and said, "Get up on that balcony and sing." And I'm like, "Yeah, but somebody's just dropped down dead." He said, "That's what we pay you for." So I was like, and I was up on the balcony singing, and there's ambulances flying around. I thought, that's entertainment. That's what it is. So when everything's flying around you, an explosion, get up on that balcony and sing. That's what we pay you for. And it's a moment of absolute clarity and absolute horror as they're carting off the body. And the pack aren't listening to me sing and dance. The pack are filming that body as it's going in the ambulance.
But isn't that what killed Robin Williams?
I think Robin Williams killed Robin Williams, or the FBI or the CIA.
But it's like it's for that. I mean, like I always explain to Kaz, right, my wife, when I come home from prison, I'm more exhausted from being on for all those hours.
Yeah, but you're going to be buzzing after.
Right?
I did a big show a few years ago called Jerusalem, and it's kind of like King Lear, and it's sort of full staff, and it's like Johnny Lydon from Johnny Rotten rolled into one. And the first things you're coming out and saying, you're effing and jeffing, using the C word. So that's what you attack the audience. And the role is like, it's like a 2.5 hour show. And you're always on the stage, massive speeches. And I remember the adrenaline of that was so much that when I came off, it would be like 3 o'clock in the morning, I'd still be going, right? And then I'd just cut out. And I remember, get this, on the last night, did the show. And I was so tired. On the stage was a sofa. That was Johnny's sofa. And I just fell asleep on it. And when I woke up, they'd broken the set. The set was gone and it was just me on the sofa. That's how quickly things turn over. And your last week's news, on to the next thing.
That's insane. It's insane. So you got to stay current, people. You got to stay current. You got to keep things fresh. And, I was just talking about that with Alan Lewis, my last guest. I shouldn't say that really in case I put these shows out in a different order. But hey, I'll talk about, sort of adapting to things, and the Biscuit had to go through a massive, we'd just got funding for a mobile studio to go out to events and festivals and things, which we're doing now, right before COVID. So we had this plan. We had this plan. We had all the things set up in the diary and everything, and we couldn't use our studio. We had at the time we had a studio in the Parade Shopping Centre, so people could come to our studio, which we don't have anymore, and we couldn't use that either because all the shops had shut. So I was kind of like, what am I going to do? So we had to flip it on its head and be like, okay, what we're going to do now is we're going to talk about how the world continues.
Yeah.
So we're talking to charities. How do charities go and get their money? How are businesses adopting shops? Who's doing Etsy? Who's doing like virtual events? Who's doing this, that, and the other? And that kind of worked as well. So you got to keep things fresh. And I had a bit of a heart attack a few weeks ago because if you do podcasts, you'll probably be aware that sort of podcast hosts like mine is Podbean. They changed the way they do their analytics, right? So if you've dipped into a show for a few seconds and dipped out, it won't class as a download or a view, right? So some people will probably start listening to one of my podcasts and then dip out, and then so we had a massive drop in listeners, huge, monumental. I was like, oh my god, what's happened? And then I read into it and realised, oh, actually, I've gained hundreds of listeners rather than thousands of listeners. Yeah. There's still hundreds of loyal customers right there. It's still customers. You guys aren't customers. You're my very valuable listeners, and I love you very much.
They're your friends.
They're my friends. There's still people that are still there doing it, right? So despite what goes on, you got to keep just being and be. Make sure you have constant materials while you need to stay current. What's the word? Don't get complacent, and you need to be
keep changing it up.
Yeah,
don't settle into a groove, and maybe talk to people
consistent. That's the
insistent, and talking to people you don't necessarily agree with or get on with.
I love that. I love that. And I love that with the biscuit. I get to speak to people. I always describe the Shrewsbury Biscuit as the one show for Shrewsbury because we speak to people from all sorts.
It's actually better than the one show.
Yeah. I mean, I think so.
And the calibre of guests is
spot on. Absolutely spot on. And as for the host, probably could do better. But yeah, so what kind of podcast would you like to start? And this is one of the important things. When you start in a podcast, you need to find out what it is you want to make.
Yeah, like I said, the whole thing about creativity, connectivity, community. So if I had a mission...
That you need to create an umbrella for that.
Yeah. So I really like the idea of getting people within the community who have an idea, but were a little bit afraid to do it. Okay. So you're seeing different folk up there, not just the same old faces. And also if there's talent that hasn't sort of emerged, I'd like to do that. And nurture it and get it into my shows because I write musicals. We did one a few years ago called Hamlin, and we did that as a community musical, and it worked. And we're doing a bigger one now called The Legend of Dinosaur George Muldoon, which is this sort of crazy gothic romp, and we've got about 8 hours of music for it. But so that'll go out hopefully in the next 18 months. But the thing is there's loads of people in their bedrooms, there's loads of people shut up in their houses, and if they knew stuff was going on, and if they knew there were spaces where they could go develop their stuff, and people would come and help them realize their dream, that's the first step on their journey. You talk about a journey. So going back to that background, I was always about working with people who, had arrived with issues and difficulties and problems. And it was about hopefully helping them course correct and find a path. So if my pod was about anything, it would be about celebrating community, and it'd be about the idea that you can do this. Is a space. Can we get a space? Is there anybody out there who's going to give us a space to rehearse for nothing because we've got no money? And is there anybody who wants to put a show on? Is there anybody going to come and support it? That's what I want to see. And then hopefully, the community starts to reform and get going again. Yeah. Is that clear?
No, that's very clear. Find a friend who kind of fits that bracket, who you can mess about with audio, and record a few mock interviews. Right, listen back to them. When we did Thor's Game, we did a couple of little bits. I always remember the first time I ever made the podcast, my intro took 17 takes because I was kind of like, how do I do this? I used to make an effort to draw people in with a very big intro, and then I used to watch Joe Rogan, and Joe Rogan just as you see that spinning head on YouTube, his logo, and then he'd just be like, okay, and we're in. And I used to love that. He'd be talking as the logo was still spinning. And I used to love that sort of. Yeah.
There's the favourite actor of mine called Stephen Burkoff, and he did a one-man show, 6 Shakespeare villains, and he just had him in a bare stage, and it was mesmerising. And I always remember at the end of the first act, he just paused and said, "And interval." And that was it. And it was like, because it was him. It was just genius. And the command just to take that pause and interval. In fact, I don't think he said "and," he just said interval. And everybody went, "It's the interval. Fine, thanks for that."
Go for a smoke now.
And he just wandered. and I think there's some people, again, go back, like Peter Brook talks about the empty space. This whole idea is that, the job of the podcast host or the actor is to mesmerize and fascinate. So I think you've really got to grab people's attention. And that's the difference between a good actor and a great actor, is they fascinate. Something like Ian McKellen. McKellen's just done this thing, a one-man show, just him talking about his life, a box of props. I
saw the trailer for that on
unbelievable.
Facebook.
There's a whole bunch of worthies
stage
behind
going,
him.
"You shall not pass!" And I was like, as if he brought that to the stage.
But he did it, and he got some young girl up from out the audience to come and do the sword and stuff, and he was just a genius. And I think it's that thing is like, he's fascinating. What's he got? How does he do that? It's because he's worked his game and he's done all these different things, and he's able to bring it into the moment, and he fills that empty space, and Burkoff did it. There was once a moment when he's walking the corridors of Elsinore, if you know Hamlet, and he just did this mime where he's walking these corridors for miles, and in your imagination you're seeing it, and all he's doing is walking in a certain way, like going around mock staircases up and up, and you get the sense from what he's doing at this huge space. That is genius. Beautiful.
Yeah, and embrace your genius, guys. Embrace your genius. Cool. Well, this is meant to be a podcast workshop, but we kind of covered everything. We should just call it Stu's Digression. There we go.
This is it.
Digression.
I think life is just a series of digressions, isn't it? That take you somewhere more interesting than where you're intending to go.
That's what life is. Digression. I like that. We should put that in a t-shirt.
Digression. I think it's the great. That's what I'm going to call my podcast. Digression.
Digression. That'd be great.
What's your personal philosophy of life? Digression.
If you want to start a podcast, get in touch with me and I'll help you out in any way you can. I've had a few people get in touch with me and be like, "I want to start a podcast," and what I've done is I've set up like a mock Amazon shopping list of things they'll need and just send it to them. Or if you need help on learning how to edit or how to use the software or how to create logos, little silly things that I can help you with, I'm willing to help you. Because I feel like like I said, there's 8 billion people out here. That's 16 billion ears. There's lots and lots of people. And I think there's lots of good values to doing what we do, and especially when it comes to communication. Away from this microphone, if you guys could understand, I'm a blithering idiot. Like, I really am, especially in public. I'm kind of like, I got me Mike Perkins, who's coming on his show soon, and made me cry in a coffee shop a couple of days ago, a couple of weeks when this is going out. I was sat in House Coffee in Shrewsbury doing some editing, right? An hour before Timmy had gone to school, and Charlie Adlard, who's local, co-creator of The Walking Dead, he's been on the show a few times. He knows who I am. He's been on the show a few times, and he's over there with this chap over the other side of the coffee shop, right? And they're getting up to leave, and I noticed him like, "Hey, all right, carry on." And I noticed this guy walking across the way, and he grabs my hand, he shakes my hand, he's like, "Oh mate, I really like your podcast. I've just moved to Shrewsbury from the States." He's a British guy. He's moved to, he's like, "I really like your show. It's really helped me acclimatise to the town. Thank you very much. My name's Mike Perkins. I'm the head illustrator on Swamp Thing, and I work with DC Comics." And I was just like, "What?"
See, I knew you were a cartoon.
And then Charlie comes over and he's like, "Hi Alex, how's it going?" And I'm chatting to Charlie and I'm chatting to my new friend Mike, who I've just met, and I'm chatting to these guys, and it was really nice. And they walked out, and nobody around me had understood how important this was to me, that these people come over, and I was just like, I was so overwhelmed. A tear rolled down my cheek. I wiped it away, and I was kind of like, whew, that was weird. Amazing but weird, So Mike's coming on the show. Look forward to that one. So he's coming around next week. That'd be good.
Awesome. Well, I've enjoyed it. Thank you for taking the time to take me on a whistle-stop tour of the world of pod.
It's a difficult one. It is a difficult one because I digress. I don't think
that's a problem.
Hello, listeners, and thank you so much for listening to this episode of the Shrewsbury Biscuit podcast. There is so much you can get involved with the show. We have our YouTube Vintage Biscuit. They're released every Sunday, and they are classic episodes of the Shrewsbury Biscuit. We've been going for over 300 episodes, and we thought we would utilise YouTube in a way that we never have before by releasing those classic episodes every Sunday. If you subscribe to the Shrewsbury Biscuit podcast YouTube channel, and hit that bell button at the top, you'll be notified every time there's a new episode released. You can also follow the Shrewsbury Biscuit podcast on Instagram. You can follow us on Facebook and on Twitter as well. I'm not brilliant on Twitter, but Instagram and Facebook is definitely where it's at, and you'll get all the gossip, where we are, what we've been up to, great pictures, episode art. You'll be told when episodes are released, and you'll get the links there as well. You can listen to the show on Spotify, iTunes, and you can listen to us on Podbean. You can even tell Alexa, Siri, or Google Home to play an episode of the Shrewsbury Biscuit, and it will do as it's told. And finally, check out our website, which is www.theshrewsburybiscuitpodcast.co.uk, and that's made for us by our friends at Web Orchard. If you need a website, make sure you check out Web Orchard, and they will make you a fantastic website that looks just as cool as ours, if not cooler, because they are brilliant at what they do. Right, thank you for listening to this episode, and we'll catch you next time. Peace out, guys.